Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily News. I'm Nicholas Richardson. Orlen announced that the company's supervisory board has agreed to halt the Olefins 3 complex construction project in its current scope. According to the company's new board, the investment is not profitable. The ruling party is fond of talking about scaled-back investments by Law and Justice. The problem is that there are no alternatives, and the economy, as a result of stalled investments, has no chance to develop. From where and in whose interests are decisions unfavourable to the Polish economy being made?
Several billion zloty have already been spent and more than 20 more have already been contracted for the Olefins 3 investments. This did not prevent the current Orlen management from stopping investments crucial to the development of the Polish economy. Unfortunately, there are more such halted investments. What else has been stopped and why? Today, I'm taking a closer look at the situation. Orlen will no longer be a leader. This causes the Germans to set trends for us, by the way, and this is what they want. And to be honest, if they say that this is an exaggerated investment, then let them see the Saudis, who are building an even larger such installation. Let them look at the American direction and other directions. Orlen announced that the company's supervisory board has agreed to halt the Olefins 3 complex construction project in its current scope. It cites the unprofitability of the investment as the reason. The investment in its current scope, given its ever-increasing costs, the distant completion date and the lack of promising prospects for the petrochemical sector in Europe, has no business justification and cannot be continued. It is no secret that the main downside of the Olefins 3 investment is that it began under the Law and Justice government. That's why it had to be stopped. It was the same with the construction of the Central Transportation Port or Intel's factory in Poland. I think this fits into a certain direction of industrial policy, in which most of these new investments, and the investments in olefins is one of them, will most likely be stopped. Coalition steamroll has already driven over the Central Transportation Port and now over Olefins 3, the largest petrochemical investment in Europe, which Orlen was supposed to build. Lack of ambition, complexes, micromania. They're destroying everything that could give Poland development. Who does this serve? We all know, and it's not about the Poles. Let's stop them. The Central Transportation Port is also to be truncated, to say the least, and once again postponed. The document confirms the plan to delay the commissioning of the Central Transportation Port Airport until the end of 2032. Meanwhile, it is still possible to complete construction by the end of 2030, but it is necessary, for example, to apply for a location decision with the rigour of immediate implementability. Meanwhile, Mr. Minister Maciej Lasek, for reasons unknown only to himself, intends to wait for the entire coming year for the localisation decision to become final, which blocks the possibility of applying for a construction permit. We have behind us a year of cooling national ambitions, a year of killing the most important projects for the Polish economy, that is. For example, the case of the Central Transportation Port, which we already know today, will be delayed for years, and when it comes to the scale of the investment, it will be significantly reduced. In addition, 19,800 people will lose their jobs this year as a result of group layoffs carried out by companies throughout Poland. Also by state-owned companies like Poczta Polska and PKP Cargo. It may be true that they do not support Polish entrepreneurship, but they do everything so that there is no foreign investment. The flagship example is the investment of the American company Intel, the agreement negotiated by the government of Law and Justice, by the government of Mateusz Morawiecki. The only thing to do was not to spoil it, and today we hear that there will be no Intel in Poland. Intel's former chief executive officer asks for prayers for laid-off workers. In turn, the opposition poses a question. Who will benefit from all this, if not the Polish economy? Olefins, I would say, is such an absolutely scandalous example, or an example of the anti-Polish anti-state. Well, I don't know who is functioning there in this government, how many different comrades and their appendages, German or Russian, there are. And the next question is whether, in your opinion, Orlen's investment in Olefins 3 could have threatened German interests. Of course it did. I waive this question. Only that the Polish government should act in the defence of Polish companies, not other people's interests. And about that, there should be no doubt.
Concern among soldiers of the Territorial Defence Forces was caused by an on-net publication about, and I quote, reductions in companies consisting of 4 platoons. Commanders are trying to tone down the sensational reports by journalists and to explain that this is a planned reorganisation of the service. Experts admit that reorganisation is good, but only if it goes hand in hand with a change in the concept of command, which is required by today's real battlefield conditions.
This is one of hundreds of training sessions that troops of the Polish Territorial Defense Forces undergo each year. There are scenarios played out by teams and tasks to be completed. In theory, every mistake is analyzed and becomes part of the training. This is how it works in each of the 17 brigades across Poland. These, on the other hand, are trenches somewhere in the Kurachowe region in eastern Ukraine. In them, mostly conscripts, who after a few weeks of training were thrown to the front. Here, every mistake costs lives. Every unforeseen scenario results in the loss of a position, sometimes an entire village, and the disruption of the defense. Why this comparison? Because the lesson to be learned by the Polish military from the Ukrainian front was set the day before yesterday. As experts say, you need to act faster, more decisively, and above all, come up with a plan to act not only for the army, but also for civilians.
My nie możemy tam skupiać się na
We can't focus on tanks or cannons. Today, we need to focus first and foremost on the logistics supports to the front line, being able to repel and secure people from a multifaceted war. That's why soldiers treat every piece of information about changes in formation operations as a guidepost. That's why the catchy title about sending the 4th platoons in each company of the Territorial Defense Forces under the knife in an Onet article caused a storm. The Territorial Defense Forces are doing a redesign of their structures. Each company is now to count 3 platoons of light infantry. This means that there will be reductions in companies that consist of 4 platoons. Commanders of all brigades of the Territorial Defense Forces have coped with the reform so as not to lose soldiers. Only the commander of the 13th Silesian Brigade of the Territorial Defense Forces was expected to disregard the issue. More than 100 of his soldiers faced the prospect of being kicked out of the army. How much truth is there in these claims? According to a spokesman for the Silesian Brigade, not much. He explains the confusion with duties in the establishment of a new battalion, reorganization and the construction of the brigade in Opole, and assures that no one will lose their post. It seems to me that this is more of an attack on the commander than honest journalism. So I wanted to reassure everyone that no one will be dismissed and that no soldier will be dismissed due to the liquidation of the 4th platoons. This is the personal assurance I have from Colonel Paweł Piątkowski, commander of the 13th Silesian Brigade of Territorial Defense Forces. So why all the fuss? From the fact that a week ago, the commander of the Territorial Defense Forces spoke about the completion of the brigade structures and that no more will be formed, combined with the reduction of platoons to 3 per company, builds a message of at least putting the brakes. Poland has no civilian defense plan. In case of conflict, operational troops are on the front line. Territorial defense is supposed to serve as support and a possible second line. There is no third. The war in Ukraine has made it clear that the battlefield looks very different today than it did just a decade ago. The soldiers of Assad's army in Syria, which was defeated in a few days by rebels imitating the tactics of Ukrainian soldiers, found this out the hard way. Today, no one in the Polish military speaks out loud about the need to build drone troops, prepare for field production of flying grenades, or enemy drone jammers. And it is these tactical elements today that often determine the advantage in the battles in eastern Ukraine.
Brussels is pushing through a deal that could destroy Polish agriculture. The agreement with Mercosur, or South American countries, will hit Polish farmers first and foremost. The President of the European Commission, as well as the European People's Party, which includes Civic Platform in the European Parliament, are urging EU states to adopt the unfavourable legislation as soon as possible. Polish farmers feel that they have been deceived.
No wonder Ursula von der Leyen is received with the highest honors in South America.
Damas y caballeros, hoy es un hito verdaderamente histórico y permítanme.
The European Union-Mercosur countries' agreement being pushed by the head of the European Commission is a massive blow to Polish agriculture. As a Polish farmer, I feel deceived by the European Union because if the agreement with Mercosur comes into force, the scale of this agreement looks namely as follows. We as Polish farmers, for example farming 1 hectare, would have to compete as with a farmer who has 1,000 hectares. The question is whether the current government led by Donald Tusk will defend farmers or follow orders from Berlin and Brussels as before, especially since the European People's Party, which includes the Civic Platform and PSL in the European Parliament, and chaired before by Donald Tusk, is calling for quick ratification of the Mercosur agreement. The leadership in signing this agreement of the European Union with Mercosur, of course, was taken over by Germany, which has its own specific export interests to South American countries. And this assumption of signing an agreement with Mercosur does not assume at all the concern for the interests of the Polish farmer. Prime Minister Donald Tusk does not care at all about the interests of Polish agriculture, and on the contrary, only cares about the interests of the German state, because Germany will benefit most from this agreement and does not take into account the opinion of other countries. What does the agreement between the European Union and the Mercosur group countries contain? Only benefits for South American countries. First and foremost, a large reduction in tariffs on products from these countries, agreement to much lower production standards, and no protection at all for EU farmers. This situation will lead to, one could say, mass bankruptcies of farmers, because the prices that will be offered by suppliers from South America will be much lower, but it will also translate into a deterioration, and it will be a strong deterioration of the economic situation. Now, Brussels is trying at all costs to force EU countries to sacrifice their own agriculture in favor of products of questionable quality from countries without strict standards. Polish farmers, above all, will lose out. Large quantities of cheaper food, but of much lower quality, will flood European markets. We cannot allow this to happen. Enough of this policy that is so harmful to the countries of the European Union, so harmful to Polish and European agriculture. The Mercosur countries include 12 South American countries, whose goals include selling their own agricultural products and expanding into EU markets. I want our agribusiness to grow, and let the anger of the French grow too, who are undermining the quality of Brazilian agricultural products. I want to tell you that the agreement will go into effect anyway. Farmers from many European countries, including Poland, protested against EU agricultural policy. At stake are healthy, high-quality Polish food products and the strength of Polish agriculture, which neither Brussels nor Berlin likes. If there were such a situation that the Polish government would be in favor of this agreement, then this is equivalent to the betrayal of farmers. Moreover, this will certainly cause even greater protests. And here we should also ask the question, is supporting the German economy or German industry, because only Germany will actually benefit most from the signing of this agreement, is that our priority? Because the cost will be enormous. The cost will be the bankruptcy of Polish farms. Without the support and protection of those in power, which for the time being there is nothing to count on, Polish farmers are doomed to failure once the family and EU market become flooded with cheap and low-quality products from South America.
Scuba Santa and his elf arrived early December at Sea Life London Aquarium. They took a dive into the open ocean tank to spread some festive cheer, much to the delight of visitors to the central London attraction in the United Kingdom.
Part of the dedicated aquarium team of conservationists, aquarists Josh Howard and Stephen Hassio, donned Santa and elf hats respectively before entering the water. The seasonal duo waved at members of the public as they fed turtles and fish their vegetables, with one stingray who is particularly fond of leek. "We're splashing through the snow with Christmas spirit here at Sea Life London Aquarium," said Catherine Pritchard, Sea Life London Aquarium's general manager, in a press release, adding, "Our team wanted to bring some holiday magic to our creatures and guests alike with a special visit from Santa and his elf. Seeing the delight and surprise on our guests' faces as they witness this underwater merry spectacle is truly an incredible way to kickstart the holiday season." Sea Life London Aquarium has 14 themed habitat zones, like the Open Oceans habitat in which Scuba Santa and his elf went diving, with over 500 species including ocellated eagle rays, zebra sharks, clownfish, blue tangs, sea goldies and a Gentoo penguin colony.
That's the news. Thank you for watching, and from it, have a good night and a better tomorrow.